The planet was silent, its cliffs rising high above empty plains. A strong wind moved through the rocks, carrying dust across the surface. When the small research ship landed, the dust lifted into a cloud, then settled again. The crew stepped down the ramp, looking at the strange land before them. Mara, the leader of the group, stood in front. She was tall, with sharp eyes that missed little. She had led many missions before, but this one felt different. The planet had no cities, no towns, not even animals moving in sight. It was quiet in a way that pressed down on the heart. Behind her walked three others. Darren, the technician, carried scanning tools across his back. He was nervous and always double-checked his equipment. Lena, the youngest of the group, followed close, her eyes full of wonder. She had read stories about forgotten planets and ancient places, and she wanted to see everything for herself. Last was Roan, the strong one of the team, a man who spoke little but kept his hand on the side of his pack as if ready for danger. Their ship had landed near a cliff wall. From above, the cliff looked solid, but once they came closer, they found an opening. It was dark inside, wide like a mouth cut into the stone. "This must be the cave the signal pointed to," Mara said, checking her wrist pad. "No other structure for hundreds of kilometers. The source is coming from here." Lena stepped forward, her voice light. "It looks deep. Imagine how old it is. The walls could hide markings, maybe even tools from whoever lived here." Roan grunted but said nothing. Darren adjusted the scanner on his shoulder. "I don't like this. Caves eat signals. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to call the ship." Mara looked at him, steady and calm. "That's why we have you. Keep the link alive. We won't go too deep without reason." They walked toward the opening. The air grew colder as soon as they stepped into the shadow. The ground was uneven, dust pressing up around their boots. Their lights cut through the darkness, showing stone walls that curved like ribs of some giant creature. The deeper they went, the more the sound changed. The wind that had been blowing outside now echoed through the tunnels, bending and twisting into strange tones. At first it was only noise, like air whistling through cracks. But then, the tones began to sound like voices. Low, faint, but still there. Lena stopped, holding her breath. "Do you hear that?" Mara lifted her light, listening. The air carried a thin murmur, as if someone far away was speaking. She narrowed her eyes. "The wind is playing tricks." Darren's face grew pale. "No, that sounded like words." The group stood still. The cave seemed to breathe around them. Whispers ran along the walls, not clear, but heavy with meaning they could not understand. Roan finally spoke, his voice rough. "It's only sound. Rocks shift. Air moves. That is all." But even as he said it, a chill passed over them. They moved further in. Mara marked the walls with light beacons to guide their path. The cave stretched long, splitting into different passages, yet all leading downward. Their scanners showed strange energy deep below, pulsing faintly, drawing them forward. The whispers grew sharper. Darren kept shaking his head, tapping his scanner as if to block the sound. "It keeps saying my name," he whispered. "I swear it does." "No one said your name," Mara answered firmly. "Focus on your work." But Lena also felt the pressure. It was not just sound anymore. It was something reaching into her mind, brushing against her thoughts. She did not want to say it out loud, afraid the others would think she was weak. They stopped in a wide chamber. The ceiling rose high above them, lost in shadow. In the middle of the floor stood a pool of still water, black as glass. When Mara shone her light across it, the surface reflected their faces back, but the images looked older, almost broken, as if they were seeing themselves years from now. "Strange," Lena whispered. "It feels like the cave is watching us." Darren shivered. No, not watching. Listening. The sound returned, stronger now. It filled the chamber with long, drawn words. They did not know the language, but the tone was heavy with warning. Mara forced her breath steady. She would not show fear to her team. Set the scanners here. Record everything. We need to know what this energy is. They placed their tools, lights flickering as the machines started. The readings shifted wildly, lines running up and down. Darren cursed under his breath. This is impossible. It's like the cave is pushing back. Nothing holds steady. It's breaking the signal. Suddenly, the ground shook. Dust fell from above, rolling across their lights. The pool of water rippled, sending their reflections into strange shapes. The entrance, Roan said at once. We must check it. They ran back through the passage. But when they reached the place where they had entered, their path was gone. Stones had fallen, sealing the way behind them. The opening to the outside was buried under heavy rock. Lena's heart pounded. She stepped back, her voice small. We're trapped. Mara lifted her light, jaw tight. She looked at the rocks, then at her crew. We are not trapped. There will be another way out. Every cave has more than one opening. We will find it. The whispers came again, louder than before, almost mocking them. The sound slid across the walls, crawling into their ears. Darren dropped his scanner and covered his head with his hands. It knows, he cried. It knows we can't leave. Mara grabbed his arm, pulling him up. Control yourself. We are human. We do not bow to echoes in the dark. The group stood together, lights shining into the endless tunnel before them. The air was colder, the whispers heavier, as if the cave itself was alive and waiting. Mara raised her head, eyes hard. We go deeper. The way out is forward. Stay close. Do not listen. They stepped into the dark once more. The stone walls closed around them, the cave swallowing their light. Behind them, the blocked entrance stood silent, like a mouth that had closed shut. Ahead of them, the whispers carried on, waiting for their next step. The air grew heavy as they walked deeper into the stone passage. Their footsteps echoed off the walls, yet the echoes never sounded quite right. Sometimes the steps came back too fast, other times too slow, like another group was following them from just a step behind. Mara led the way, her light steady, her back straight. She could feel the eyes of her team on her, waiting for her to show fear, but she kept her voice calm. Stay close. Do not wander. We find a path to the surface. Darren lagged at the rear. His hands shook as he tried to keep his scanner alive, but the screen flickered with broken lines. He pressed buttons, whispered to himself, and shook the device. It won't hold. The signal is slipping, like the cave itself is jamming us. Roan turned his head, his low voice cutting through the air. Then put it away. A broken tool only makes you slower. Darren glared at him, his voice sharp. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who hears it. Hears what? Lena asked quickly, her young face pale in the light. Darren's throat tightened. He lowered his voice to a whisper. My name. I hear it calling. Over and over. As if the cave knows me. The others went silent. The only sound was the long breath of wind moving through the rocks. Then, faint and sharp, a whisper passed through the air. Lena stiffened. It sounded like Darren. Her hand gripped Mara's sleeve. I heard it too, she whispered. Mara's jaw tightened. She had heard it as well, though she would not admit it. Fear spread quickly in dark places, and she could not let her team drown in it. We ignore it, she said firmly. Voices in the wind cannot harm us. The mind plays tricks when the body is tired. Keep moving. but the words did little to ease their hearts. The passage narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. The stone walls pressed close on both sides. Lena brushed her hand across the rock, trying to steady herself. The whispers grew louder the further they went, running along the walls as if alive. "Why does it sound so near?" she asked softly. "No more questions," Mara ordered. "Save your strength." When the passage widened again, they entered another chamber. The floor sloped downward, and pools of dark water dotted the ground. Their lights shone on the surface, reflecting broken shapes, though none of them looked quite like their own faces. Darren stepped back. "This place is wrong." His voice cracked. "We should turn back, even if we have to dig through the rocks. Staying here is death." Roan's eyes narrowed. "The rocks are too heavy. We go forward." But Darren shook his head again and again. "Forward is worse. Can't you feel it? It wants us deeper. That's what it's waiting for." His breathing quickened. He stumbled back toward the wall, his scanner falling from his hands and splashing into the water. The light on it flickered and died. Lena ran to him. "Darren, stop. Don't lose yourself. We're together. We can find a way out." But Darren pushed her aside, his voice rising. "No, you don't hear it like I do. It speaks clear. It whispers promises, threats. It knows what I fear most." His words sent a shiver through all of them. Mara stepped forward, her voice firm as steel. "Enough. Fear feeds the dark. Do not give it power. We are human, and we walk with courage. Remember that." The chamber fell silent again. The team stood close, their lights cutting narrow paths through the shadows. For a moment, it seemed like the whispers had faded. Then, without warning, the ground trembled. Stones cracked above them, dust falling into their hair and eyes. The walls groaned, and a low sound, almost like laughter, ran through the chamber. Lena gasped. "It's alive. The cave is alive." "No," Mara snapped, though her own chest tightened. "It is stone. Nothing more." But the cave answered her. The whispers rose together, louder, stronger, circling them from every side. Words twisted into shapes they almost understood, like voices calling from dreams. They pressed their hands to their ears, but the sound came from inside as much as from outside. "Stop it!" Darren cried. He swung his arms, striking the air as if to fight something unseen. His light beam shook across the chamber, cutting through shadows that seemed to move on their own. Mara grabbed him by the shoulders, forcing him to face her. "Look at me. Do not listen. Do not give in." For a heartbeat, his eyes cleared. He breathed hard, chest heaving. Then he nodded weakly. I'll try." Roan stepped to the far side of the chamber, shining his light against the wall. "There's a path here. Narrow, but it leads onward." Mara turned, her mind racing. The sealed entrance was behind them. The only way left was forward. She hated being forced, but she could not let her crew sit in the chamber until fear broke them apart. "We move," she said at last. "Stay close. If anyone hears whispers, do not answer. If the cave is playing with us, then silence is our weapon." They followed Roan into the narrow passage. The stone pressed tighter around them, and the air grew colder. Their lights showed only a short stretch ahead, beyond which everything was black. Darren walked in the middle now, his head bowed, lips moving as if he were repeating words to himself for courage. Lena kept glancing back, afraid he would lose control again. After a long silence, a faint sound came through the dark. At first it was only a whisper, but soon it grew clear. It was not Darren's name this time. It was Lena's. She froze, her heart hammering. The voice was gentle, almost kind, as if it wanted to guide her. Mara noticed her stop. "Keep walking," she ordered. "But it said my name," Lena whispered, trembling. "Then ignore it. The cave knows our fear. It cannot have us unless we give it." The words carried them forward. They walked, step by step, until the passage opened once more. Ahead, they saw markings carved into the wall. Faint, scratched deep by rough hands. Mara shone her light across the stone. Her eyes narrowed. "These are human marks." Lena leaned close, reading the words. Her face grew pale. "It says, 'Do not listen.'" The group fell into silence. The whispers stirred again, curling through the air like breath against their necks. And for the first time, Mara felt something she had not wanted to admit since entering the cave. The darkness was afraid of silence. And that meant the whispers were not the wind. They were something far worse. The words carved on the stone wall burned into their minds. "Do not listen." The letters were rough, uneven, scratched as if by someone desperate. The marks looked old, older than any of them could guess. Mara ran her hand across the carvings, feeling the grooves. "Others have been here," she said. "Humans, long ago. They left this warning for a reason." Lena stood close, her voice trembling. "If they were here before, then what happened to them? Why did they not leave the cave?" No one answered. The silence stretched heavy, broken only by the faint drip of water deeper inside. Then the whispers returned, curling through the air, brushing against their ears. They no longer sounded far away. They sounded close, just behind them, just above them, sliding across their skin. Darren clutched his head. "It's stronger now. It's not just my name anymore. It's telling me to stay." His eyes darted toward the shadows. "It says the cave belongs to us now. That we cannot leave." "Don't listen," Mara ordered, her voice hard. "They are lies. We keep moving." Roan moved to the front, his lamp steady. He was not a man who wasted words. But his shoulders were stiff, and even he felt the weight of the cave pressing on them. They walked into a new passage, long and straight. The walls shimmered faintly, as if damp, but when Lena touched the stone, it was dry. Their footsteps echoed again, but the echoes twisted strangely, repeating in ways that did not match their steps. Halfway down the tunnel, Lena stopped. She grabbed Mara's arm, her face pale. "Look." At first Mara saw nothing. Then her eyes adjusted to the shifting dark. Shapes moved along the wall, blacker than the shadow itself. They slid across the stone like smoke, yet they had no clear form. Sometimes they looked like hands reaching, sometimes like faces pressed against the rock. Roan lifted his light toward them. The shadows did not vanish. They moved with the light, as if alive, slipping just outside the glow but never fully gone. Lena's voice shook. "They're following us." "No," Mara said, though her throat was tight. "They are tricks. Nothing more than tricks." But even as she spoke, one of the shapes seemed to step closer. It bent like a figure leaning forward, head tilted as if listening. The whispering grew louder, now mixed with a faint laugh. Darren broke. He rushed forward, swinging his light wildly against the walls. "Stay back. Stay away from me." His voice cracked into the dark. "Darren!" Mara shouted, running after him. But the technician stumbled, his light beam shaking. For a moment, it seemed the shadows swallowed him. Lena screamed, running to catch up. They found Darren pressed against the wall, his chest heaving, his face pale. His light had rolled across the floor, flickering weakly. "It touched me," he gasped. "I swear it touched me. Cold, like ice. I felt it on my arm." Mara grabbed him and shook his shoulders. "You're alive. Nothing has you." Do not lose yourself. But when she looked down at his arm, her heart sank. His sleeve was rimmed with frost. The cave was no longer just whispers. It was reaching out. We keep moving, she said quickly, though fear gnawed at her. If we stop, we give it power. Forward. They pushed on. The tunnel opened into another chamber, wider, taller, filled with broken stone pillars. The shadows clung to the walls, sliding slowly, as if waiting. Lena's eyes stayed fixed on them. Her breath came short. They're watching. They're not just tricks. Roan moved closer to her, his hand steady on his light. Stay near me. They cannot touch us if we hold our courage. The group crossed the chamber. At its far end, they saw more markings on the wall. These were different. Not words, but drawings. Stick figures carved in haste. Figures trapped in the cave. Figures reaching upward, while black shapes dragged them down. Lena's stomach twisted. It shows us. Just like us. Mara's hand tightened on her light. She did not want to admit it, but the carvings looked like warnings of what would happen if they failed. Suddenly, the whispers rose again. They filled the chamber like a storm, crashing from every side. Words twisted into meaning: stay. Belong. Fear feeds us. Darren dropped to his knees, covering his ears. It's inside me. I can't shut it out. Mara knelt beside him, her voice sharp but steady. Listen to me, not them. You are stronger than this. Fear is what they want. Do not give it. He shook, tears running down his face. But slowly, he nodded. He held onto her voice like a rope pulling him from the dark. The shadows shifted, sliding back toward the walls. The whispers lowered to a dull hum. Roan spoke for the first time in a long while. It does not like strength. It weakens when we stand together. Mara looked at him, then at her team. She saw their pale faces, their shaking hands, but also their determination. Then that is our weapon. Courage. If fear feeds it, then unity starves it. Remember this. They pressed onward, leaving the chamber behind. The tunnel curved downward again, deeper into the heart of the cave. The air grew colder, the stone damp beneath their boots. As they walked, Lena whispered to Mara, her voice small. What if we can't hold on? What if the shadows break us one by one? Mara put a hand on her shoulder. Then we fight harder. Humans do not bend to whispers in the dark. We make our own light. But even as she spoke, Mara's mind turned back to the carvings. Someone else had once walked these same tunnels, someone had left warnings. And yet they had never escaped. She pushed the thought away. She could not let doubt take her. If she faltered, the whole team would fall. Behind them, the shadows still moved. Quiet, patient, waiting. And in the dark, the cave whispered again, soft and cold. It did not sound defeated. It sounded amused. The shadows trailed them as they moved deeper, slipping along the walls like ink poured into cracks. The whispers never stopped now. They came in waves, sometimes soft as a breath, other times sharp and heavy, forcing their ears to ring. Mara forced herself to stay calm, though the weight pressed on her shoulders. She could feel her crew wearing down. Darren's eyes darted wildly, his lips moving in silent words only he could hear. Lena's face had gone pale, her hands trembling each time the whispers swelled. Roan walked steady, but even his strong steps carried tension. The tunnel led them into another wide chamber. This one was different. Strange symbols lined the walls, carved deeper and cleaner than the desperate marks they had seen before. The shapes formed spirals, circles, and long lines that crossed each other like paths on a map. Lena stepped close, running her fingers across the carvings. These aren't human. They look older. Like something that lived here long before us. Mara studied the marks. Her light passed over the carvings, and for a moment they seemed to shift, the spirals bending like they were alive. She pulled her hand back quickly. Whoever made these wanted them to be remembered. Darren let out a bitter laugh. Remembered? They're warnings. Just like the last wall. This whole cave is nothing but a grave of warnings. Roan crouched low, brushing dust from the ground. There, half buried under stone, were bones. Long, twisted bones not shaped like human bodies. He picked up one piece, its surface smooth, almost polished by time. Not our kind, he said. Lena gasped. So others came before us. Another race. Mara nodded slowly. Yes. And the cave kept them here. The whispers rose again, rushing across the chamber. The sound formed words that echoed in all their minds. They feared. They fed us. They remain. Darren covered his ears, his voice breaking. I told you. It's real. It's speaking. It knows we're here. Quiet, Mara ordered. She would not let panic take them. She turned her focus back to the symbols. The spirals all seemed to point downward, toward a single mark carved larger than the rest. It looked like a circle filled with jagged lines. Lena whispered, maybe it's the heart of the cave. Where the whispers come from. Mara's jaw tightened. Then that is where we must go. If we understand it, maybe we find a way to break free. The thought of going deeper filled them all with dread. But the sealed entrance above left no choice. Forward was the only path. They left the chamber, stepping into another passage. The walls here were rougher, scarred with long scratches as if something had clawed at the stone. Their lights shook across the marks, each one stretching like a wound. Darren muttered, something lived here. Something still does. Roan shook his head. No. This cave does not need a creature. The cave itself is alive. The words struck them all, but no one argued. As they walked, the whispers changed. They no longer called their names but offered soft promises. Voices spoke of rest, of safety, of freedom if they only stopped walking. The words curled warm and kind, almost comforting. Lena slowed, her steps faltering. It says we don't have to be afraid anymore. That it can take the fear away. Mara turned sharply. Do not listen. The cave twists lies. It offers comfort so it can take everything else. But Lena's eyes filled with tears. What if it's true? What if we don't have to suffer if we just let go? Roan gripped her arm and pulled her forward. Suffering keeps us human. Without it, we are nothing. The whispers hissed at his words, rising sharp and angry. The shadows along the walls grew darker, pressing closer to their lights. Suddenly, Darren cried out. His body jerked as if pulled, and he stumbled into the side passage. Darren! Mara shouted, chasing after him. They ran into a narrow tunnel, their lights bouncing off the tight stone. At the far end, Darren stood frozen, his eyes wide, staring into the dark. Mara reached him, grabbing his arm. What are you doing? Stay with us. But his voice was flat, empty. It shows me, my home. My family. They're waiting. They say I can come back if I just listen. Mara shook him hard. That is not your family. That is the cave. Fight it? Darren's face twisted. For a moment, his eyes cleared. He gasped, pulling free. No, no, it's lying. It wants me. Behind him, the shadows thickened. They rose higher on the walls, forming shapes of people, faces, and hands reaching out. Go. Roan shouted. Back to the main path. They dragged Darren away just as the shadows lunged, sweeping across the tunnel like a wave. Their lights flickered, nearly dying, before sparking back to life. The shadows retreated, hissing as if burned. The group collapsed back into the larger tunnel, breathing hard. Darren trembled in Mara's arms. I almost gave in. It was so real. I wanted to believe. Mara held his gaze. Wanting does not make it true. You are stronger than its lies. We all are. They rose together and kept moving. None of them dared to look back. After what felt like hours, they reached another chamber. This one was smaller, round, with a single stone pillar in the center. On the pillar, carved deep, were more human words. Mara shone her light across them. The letters were shaky, but still clear. Fear feeds the dark. Silence weakens it. Her chest tightened. The carvings were not ancient this time. They looked fresher, as if someone had written them not too long ago. Lena whispered, so others came here after all. They fought like us. Roan frowned. Then where are they now? The chamber answered with a low hum, the walls vibrating with sound. The whispers grew furious, rushing through the stone like a storm. The shadows writhed along the walls, twisting into long, broken shapes. Mara raised her voice above the sound. Do not answer. Do not give it fear. Remember the word silence weakens it. They stood together, silent, refusing to cry out. The whispers raged, screaming through their minds, clawing for a reaction. Darren shook, his teeth clenched. Lena's eyes filled with tears. But none of them spoke. At last, the storm passed. The chamber fell quiet again. The shadows drew back into the walls, softer than before. Mara lowered her light, her voice calm. We know its secret now. Fear feeds it. Courage starves it. We can win. But even as she spoke, she knew the cave would not stop. It would fight harder. And somewhere deep below, beyond the tunnel still ahead, something waited. Something that was not just whispers, not just shadows. Something that was the true heart of the cave. The silence they had forced on themselves gave them a moment of strength, but it did not last long. The deeper they went, the heavier the cave seemed to press down on them. The air grew colder, and their lights flickered as if the darkness itself was trying to swallow them whole. Mara stayed in front, her steps steady, though her chest was tight. She knew her team was close to breaking. Darren walked with his head lowered, whispering to himself. Lena's hands trembled, and every time the whispers rose faintly, she bit her lip to stop herself from answering. Roan was silent, but Mara could see the tension in his jaw. The tunnel opened into another wide space. This chamber was different from the rest. The walls here were covered in carvings, not just marks, but entire pictures. Figures were scratched into the stone, showing a story in long lines and spirals. Lena lifted her light higher, her eyes wide. It's a history, she said softly. Look at this. The carvings showed tall, thin beings with long arms and strange faces. They were drawn standing outside the cave, carrying tools, building fires, living as a people. In the next set of drawings, those same beings were shown entering the cave, their eyes wide, their hands raised in fear. The following images were darker. The beings were surrounded by black shapes, swallowed in spirals. Some figures knelt, hands covering their ears. Others lay flat on the ground. The last images showed only black, jagged lines covering everything. Lena stepped back, her face pale. This cave destroyed them. It fed on them until nothing was left. Roan's voice was low. It is not just a place. It is a predator. Mara studied the walls carefully. At the far end of the chamber, human letters had been carved over the alien drawings. The words were uneven, written in a rush. The cave is not alive, but it feeds. It makes fear into chains. Do not believe the voices. She spoke the words aloud. Hearing them in her own voice sent a chill through the group. Darren shook his head, his voice sharp. Not alive? It feels alive. It knows us. It calls us by name. Mara turned to him. Alive or not, it wants one thing. It feeds on fear. Every scream, every tremble, every drop of panic it grows stronger. That's why it shows us shadows. That's why it whispers. The more we believe, the more we give it. Lena's voice shook. Then the only way to beat it, is not to be afraid. Mara nodded. Yes. Courage is our weapon. If we hold together, we can weaken it. But Darren let out a broken laugh. Not be afraid? Look around you. We're trapped in the dark. The walls whisper. The shadows move. You can't just tell fear to stop. Mara stepped close, her eyes steady. No, you can't. But you can choose not to give in. Fear will knock, but you do not have to open the door. Her words seemed to reach him, though his face still twisted with doubt. The whispers stirred again, rushing around the chamber. But this time the words were different. They did not mock. They pleaded. Do not fight. We will protect you. Surrender your fear, and we take it away. No pain. No doubt. Only silence. Lena's heart raced. The voice sounded warm, kind, almost motherly. It touched the part of her that wanted rest, that wanted the weight of terror to lift from her chest. For a moment, she believed. She took a step forward, her lips parting. But Roan's strong hand caught her arm. No. That is the trap. It takes everything once you agree. Lena gasped, pulling back. Her eyes cleared, and tears rolled down her cheeks. It almost had me. I wanted to believe. Mara turned to them all. That is its true strength. Not shadows. Not whispers. It makes you want to give in. It offers comfort, but it is a chain. Darren spoke in a weak voice. If others were here before us, and they knew this, why didn't they escape? Mara looked again at the last human words on the wall. Do not believe the voices. The letters were deep, carved again and again, as if the writer had been desperate. They tried, she said softly. But the cave must have broken them. One by one, it took them. Roan tightened his grip on his light. Then we cannot let it take us. We fight together. The chamber rumbled as if the cave itself had heard his defiance. The shadows surged, twisting across the walls in violent shapes. The whispers grew harsh, screaming now, no longer soft and kind. The team huddled together, lights pointing outward. The shadows reached, forming long arms, jagged claws, and faces that stretched unnaturally wide. The whispers slammed into their heads like hammers. You cannot win. You are small. You are weak. You belong here. We have taken many before you. We will take you too. Darren fell to his knees, clutching his head. It's too strong. We can't fight it. Mara knelt beside him, shouting above the noise. Yes, we can. Listen to me, not them. You are human. You have strength no cave can steal. She looked to Lena and Roan. Stand together. Show it we are not broken. They locked arms, their lights joining, shining brighter in the chamber. They stayed silent, not answering the voices, not feeding the cave with fear. The shadows writhed, shrinking back from the light. The whispers cracked, breaking apart into fragments of sound. For a moment, the cave seemed to recoil. Darren lifted his head, eyes wide. It's weaker. It can't stand against us when we hold strong. Mara's voice was firm. That is the truth. Fear is its food. But unity, courage, silence that starves it. Slowly, the chamber quieted. The shadows slipped back into the walls, leaving only faint stains of darkness. The team stood breathing hard, sweat on their brows despite the cold air. Roan looked at Mara. "We know what it is now. We know how to fight." Mara nodded, though her eyes narrowed. "Yes. But it will not give up. It will try harder. And deeper inside, there may be something worse, the true heart of the cave. We have to face it." The others nodded, their fear still burning but their courage stronger. They had learned the truth. The cave was not alive like a creature, but it was worse. It was a hunger that never ended, a hunger that turned fear into chains. And it would not stop until it had consumed them all unless they could reach its heart and break free. The cave was quieter now, but the silence was heavy, like the calm before a storm. Mara led the group forward, every step slow and careful. Their lights pushed back the dark, but all of them knew the shadows were still watching. The whispers had not disappeared. They were waiting. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them into a single line. Roan walked at the back, watching for movement. Lena stayed close to Mara, her voice low but steady as she marked the path on her tablet. Darren kept his eyes fixed on the ground, his breathing sharp and uneven. The air grew colder. Their breaths came out as mist, curling and fading fast. The walls changed too. No longer smooth stone, but jagged, like claws had scraped them again and again. Mara stopped at the edge of a vast pit. The tunnel ended, opening into a hollow space so wide their lights could not touch the far walls. The ground at their feet broke away into a sharp drop, and below stretched only blackness. Darren groaned. "It's endless. We can't cross this." Lena leaned forward carefully. Her light caught something faint across the void. A stone bridge, narrow, broken in places, but still stretching toward another tunnel on the far side. "That's the way," she whispered. Mara nodded. "We cross together. Step slow. Do not look down. Do not listen." One by one, they moved onto the bridge. The stone underfoot was rough, but narrow enough that each step had to be careful. The air above the pit felt alive, as if the darkness below was breathing. Halfway across, the whispers returned. Not soft now, but sharp, drilling into their minds. "Step off. Fall. The dark will catch you. The ground is cold, but safe. Why fight? Why suffer?" Darren stumbled, his arms flailing. Roan grabbed him, steadying him. "Keep walking. Don't answer." The whispers shifted, their tones changing. They called each of them by name, repeating their worst fears. "Mara, you will fail them all. They will die because of you. Lena, you are weak. You cannot save anyone, not even yourself. Roan, you are nothing but a shadow. They do not trust you. Darren, you are the first to fall. You will not see the end." The voices pressed harder, louder, until the air itself seemed to vibrate with their cruelty. Mara shut her eyes for a moment, forcing her voice to rise above them. "Do not believe. We choose our path, not the whispers." They moved on, step after step, the bridge trembling under their weight. But then the dark below rose up. Shapes formed in the pit, towering figures with empty faces, long arms reaching for the bridge. The shadows climbed, clawing at the stone, their bodies twisting like smoke. Lena cried out. One of the shapes swung an arm across the bridge, striking just behind her. The stone cracked, pieces falling into the pit. The sound echoed forever. Roan shouted, "Faster! Move!" They ran, though every step felt like running on a blade. The shadows clawed and hissed, their whispers rising into screams. But somehow, they reached the far side, stumbling onto solid ground as the last piece of bridge crumbled into the void behind them. Breathing hard, they pressed against the cold wall. Darren's hands shook as he laughed weakly. "We made it. I thought we were finished." Mara looked back at the pit, her jaw tight. That was only a test. The cave is showing us what it can do. The real fight is still ahead. The new tunnel was different from the others. Its walls were smooth, black as glass, reflecting their lights like mirrors. Each reflection was twisted. Mara saw herself pale and broken. Lena's reflection had no eyes. Roan's face was cracked like stone. Darren's reflection lay flat, unmoving. They kept walking, their lights cutting through the endless mirror walls. The reflections whispered in time with the cave, their mouths moving with words that did not match their own. Mara's reflection leaned close in the glass. Turn back. You will not win. The cave has no end. Your courage is nothing. She stared into it and raised her hand, pressing her palm to the wall. You are not me. You are nothing. The reflection cracked and shattered, fading into dark glass again. The others followed her lead. One by one, they ignored the reflections, refusing to give them power. Slowly, the tunnel opened into the final chamber. This space was vast, larger than any they had seen before. The ceiling rose high, covered in spirals that twisted endlessly. At the center of the floor was a pit, smaller than the last but glowing faintly with a pale light. From it came the whispers, not many voices now, but one. Deep, endless, heavy. Welcome, humans. You have come to my heart. Few reach this place. None leave. The ground trembled, cracks spreading from the glowing pit. The air felt thick, pressing against their skin. Roan raised his light, his voice firm. We will leave. We will not be your food. The voice rumbled like thunder. You cannot fight me. I am your fear. I am the dark that waits when your lights go out. I am the chain around your soul. Mara stepped forward, her light shining across the pit. You are nothing but hunger. And hunger can starve. The chamber roared, shadows rising like a storm. Figures poured from the walls, creatures of every shape, faces from their nightmares, endless and shifting. The ground shook, forcing them back. But the team did not run. Mara lifted her voice. Together. They locked arms, forming a circle, their lights pointed outward. The shadows crashed against the light, hissing, but they held strong. The whispers screamed, filling the chamber with words of doubt, pain, and fear. The walls shook, the pit glowed brighter, cracks racing outward. Darren shouted, his fear breaking into strength. We are not yours. We are not afraid. Lena cried out too, her voice clear. We stand together. Roan's voice was like iron. You cannot break us. And Mara's final words cut through the storm. We are human. Fear does not rule us. Their lights blazed, brighter than before, merging into a single beam. It struck the pit, piercing through the glow. The chamber screamed, shadows writhing and pulling back. The spiral marks on the ceiling cracked, splintering like glass. The ground split, the pit shattering. A wave of silence burst outward, throwing them to their knees. The shadows collapsed, fading into nothing. When the light cleared, the chamber was empty. The whispers were gone. Mara rose slowly, helping the others to their feet. Her chest burned, but her eyes were steady. We broke it. We starved it. Lena wiped her face, smiling through her tears. We faced it, and we won. Roan's hand rested on the wall. It was only stone now, cold and lifeless. The cave has no power left. Darren laughed softly, the sound full of relief. Then let's go home. They turned toward the tunnel, knowing the way out would still be long. But the darkness behind them was only silence now. No more whispers. No more chains. The last test was over. The cave had grown louder than ever. Whispers circled around them like a storm. Some words were clear, others were twisted sounds that made no sense. Mara felt the pressure in her ears as if the darkness itself was pushing into her head. Still, she refused to give in. She knew that fear was what the cave wanted. Her boots stepped carefully on the uneven ground. Lena and Tomasz walked close behind her. Their faces were pale but their eyes carried determination. They had lost Darren, but they were not ready to give themselves to the shadows. The whispers changed as they pushed deeper. Now they did not only hear voices of strangers, but the voices of loved ones from their past. Mara heard her father calling her name. Lena heard the gentle voice of her mother singing. Tomasz froze as he heard the voice of his little brother who had died years ago. The cave wanted to break them apart. "Do not listen," Mara said firmly. Her voice shook but her eyes were strong. "These are not real. Hold on to each other. Stay with me." They walked faster. The whispers became angry. Words turned sharp and cruel, mocking their hope and laughing at their courage. The shadows grew thicker and moved across the walls like liquid. Sometimes they took shapes: monsters, soldiers, or creatures with sharp claws. The humans stood close together. The more they refused to panic, the weaker the shadows seemed. When they reached the largest chamber yet, the ceiling rose so high it disappeared into blackness. In the far corner they saw a faint light glowing above. It looked like an opening to the outside. A cold breeze touched their faces. It was real. But the cave would not let them go so easily. From the darkness ahead, a figure stepped forward. It was Darren. Or at least it looked like him. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, but his voice carried the same tone. "Mara," the figure said softly. "It is me. You cannot leave me here. Help me. Please." Lena gasped and tried to step forward, but Mara held her arm. She shook her head. "That is not Darren," Mara said. Her heart hurt, but she knew the truth. "It is only the cave. Do not believe it." The figure reached out a hand. Shadows swirled around its body like smoke. Its face shifted between Darren's and something monstrous. The voice turned harsh. "You will not leave. You belong here now. Fear is your true master." The ground shook. The walls trembled as if the cave itself was alive and furious. Shadows closed in around them, forming a ring. The false Darren stepped closer, its eyes burning with darkness. Mara took a deep breath. "We are not afraid," she said loudly. "You cannot control us anymore." Tomasz and Lena repeated after her. "We are not afraid." The shadows hissed. The whispers grew louder, but the humans stood strong. They closed their eyes and remembered moments of light sun on their skin, laughter of friends, the warmth of fire on cold nights. The cave roared in anger. The false Darren screamed, its voice breaking into 100 echoes, until the shape twisted and collapsed into mist. The shadows around them cracked like broken glass and faded into the walls. For the first time since entering, silence fell. The faint light from the opening grew brighter. The path was clear. Mara guided Lena and Tomasz forward. Step by step they climbed toward the surface. Their muscles ached, their hearts pounded, but hope gave them strength. At last they reached the opening. Bright daylight poured down, blinding after so much darkness. They pulled themselves out, gasping as fresh air filled their lungs. The sky stretched wide and blue above them. The wind touched their faces, carrying the scent of grass and soil. They had escaped. Behind them the cave entrance stood silent, as if nothing had happened. No whispers, no shadows, only dark stone. But Mara knew the truth. The cave was still alive, waiting for the next souls who would enter with fear in their hearts. Lena sat down on the ground, tears running down her cheeks. They were not tears of weakness but of relief. Tomasz looked back at the cave with anger and sadness. "It took Darren," he said. Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes," she answered quietly. "But it will not take us. and we will make sure others know the danger. They marked the rocks around the entrance with clear words, "Do not enter. Fear lives here." Then they set their recorder and spoke into it, their voices steady. "This is Captain Mara of the research team," she said. "We entered the Cave of Whispers and discovered it is not just stone. It feeds on fear. It creates voices, illusions, and shadows to trap those who enter. If you let fear rule you, you will not escape. If you stay strong, you may survive. Let this be a warning to all humans who come here. Do not enter unless you are ready to face yourself." When the message was complete, Mara turned off the device. The sun was warm on their faces. The nightmare was behind them, though the memory would remain. They began walking back to their ship. The ground felt steady under their boots, and each step forward reminded them of their strength. As they moved away, Lena spoke softly. "Fear is the real monster." "Yes," Mara agreed. "And courage is the weapon that defeats it." The cave remained behind them, dark and silent. But the humans had won. They had faced the whispers, survived the shadows, and carried the truth back to the light. And as long as they remembered, the cave would never truly win.